In the village of Nyima, life flowed like the ancient river that curved along its borders, steady, unchanging, predictable. As you imagine this place now, you can almost feel the warm breeze against your skin, carrying whispers of a simple existence that has remained unchanged for generations. The boys of Nyima grew naturally into men who followed their father's footsteps, becoming farmers who knew the soil's secrets, fishermen who understood the river's moods, or carpenters whose hands shaped wood with inherited wisdom. The girls, after completing their secondary education, would seamlessly transition into young wives and mothers, their days filled with cooking aromas and the gentle rhythm of caring for children. Take a moment to breathe in this reality. Let your mind wander through the dusty paths of Nyima, where time itself seems to move more slowly. For the people of Nyima, universities existed only in another world, like distant stars they'd heard of, but never expected to see. Education concluded after secondary school, a finishing line that generations had accepted without question. Parents beamed with pride when their children learned to read and write, asking for nothing more because, in truth, they knew nothing more to ask for. Life in the village maintained its steady heartbeat, like your own pulse now, as you read these words, rising and setting with the sun, day after day after day. This was the way it had always been, the natural order that everyone accepted without question. But can you sense it, that subtle shift in the air, that almost imperceptible change in the rhythm? Something was approaching Nyima, a force that would forever alter the village's peaceful existence. Like a storm gathering strength beyond the horizon, change was coming. The villagers couldn't sense it yet, but soon their lives would never be the same. And now, as you continue reading, you'll find yourself drawn deeper into this story, feeling increasingly connected to these people and their journey. On one brilliantly sunny day, excitement rippled through Nyima, like stones cast into still water. From a world away, city students arrived for an excursion, bringing with them an energy unlike anything the village had ever experienced. They stepped into Nyima with confident smiles, wearing clothes that seemed to capture light, their polished shoes reflecting the sun. The villagers stood in wonder, having never witnessed such a sight. The students moved with purpose, books in hand, speaking of city life with words that sounded like music to the villagers' ears. "Look at how they walk," the villagers whispered to one another. "Look at how they talk." With generous spirits, the students shared stories of marvel and progress, machines that constructed buildings in days, technologies that transformed farming from struggle to simplicity. They demonstrated how these same innovations enhanced their education, opening doors to knowledge that seemed magical to the villagers, eyes widened with wonder and possibility. The village chief, Elder Mosegi, leaned on his walking stick, his weathered face reflecting decades of wisdom. As he observed these visitors, a thought crystallized in his mind. This is how our children should be. It was as if the entire village shared a single consciousness in that moment, a collective awakening. For the very first time, the dream of sending their own children beyond Nyima, beyond secondary school, reaching for something greater, took root in their hearts. Feel how powerful that moment is. The instant when possibility is born. Notice how your own mind expands when you truly consider what could be rather than what has always been. The city students remained in Nyima briefly, but their departure left something profound behind: hope. The villagers now dreamed of a future where their children would transcend the boundaries of their small world, walking tall in knowledge, dressed in the confidence of education, carrying wisdom that reached beyond their river and fields. Soon after, the villagers gathered beneath the sprawling baobab tree, the sacred meeting place where generations had made life-changing decisions. The men stroked their chins thoughtfully, the women exchanged meaningful glances, and the children sat close, absorbing every word with wide-eyed fascination. A consensus emerged. One child must journey to the city, must learn the ways of the wider world. But who would carry this tremendous responsibility? After moments of contemplative silence, a voice rose above the others. Amara. Heads nodded in agreement, for everyone recognized that Amara was extraordinary. Her beauty radiated like sunshine after rainfall, pure and uplifting. Her intelligence shone in the quick, observant eyes that missed nothing. Her kindness manifested in constant acts of service, helping her mother, bringing laughter to children, showing respect to elders with her gentle smile. "Yes, Amara," they affirmed, their voices gaining strength with each repetition. "She will be the one to make Nyima proud." Just as you now find yourself nodding along, feeling the rightness of this choice, sensing the potential that Amara holds within her, the village mobilized like a single organism, gathering gifts for Amara's journey. Women prepared provisions, dried yams, ground pepper, small containers of palm oil. Men contributed what little money they had saved, every coin they could spare. Like a river of love flowing toward one destination, they showered her with their collective blessing. The village matriarchs placed weathered hands upon Amara's head, whispering ancient words of protection and strength, filling her spirit with courage that would sustain her through challenges yet unimagined. "Go for us all," they told her, their voices vibrating with emotion. "Remember us, make us proud." With a heart brimming with the hopes and dreams of her entire village, Amara departed from Nyima. She clutched her small bag tightly, her mind buzzing with thoughts of the city that awaited her. As she walked away, the villagers watched, waving farewell, wiping tears from their eyes, sending their beloved daughter forth with all their collective aspirations, balanced delicately upon her slender shoulders. Close your eyes for just a moment and picture Amara at this threshold of her life, carrying not just her own dreams, but the dreams of all who love her. Feel the weight of that responsibility and the power it gives her. When Amara stepped into the city, it felt as though she had crossed into another dimension. Buildings stretched skyward like enormous trees made of glass and steel. Vehicles rushed past like startled birds, and streets overflowed with people, each following their own path, each pursuing their own purpose. Amara's eyes widened with wonder, her heart pounding with equal measures of excitement and apprehension. The school environment initially felt alien, but Amara adapted quickly. She studied with determination, always raising her hand, always absorbing every word. Soon, her teachers noticed her exceptional mind, and her classmates appreciated her genuine smile. She wasn't merely the girl from a distant village anymore. She became their friend, their equal. Amara formed a special bond with a girl named Laila, who became her closest companion. Laila knew every corner of the city's landscape and guided Amara through this new world. She taught Amara which routes were safest, which foods were worth trying, and how to navigate the city's hidden dangers. With Laila beside her, Amara felt more secure in this unfamiliar environment. But city life presented harsh realities. The money Amara's village provided barely covered her basic needs, just enough for absolute essentials. Some nights she went to bed with hunger gnawing at her stomach, her thoughts drifting back to Nyima, where her family and neighbors had contributed everything they could to support her journey. "I must not fail them," she whispered to herself each night, holding tightly to the hope they had planted within her heart. And so Amara persevered, balancing the city's challenges against her village's dreams, her spirit bending but never breaking. Like a young sapling in strong winds, take a deep breath now and feel Amara's determination becoming your own. Whatever challenges you face, you too can find this wellspring of strength within yourself. Initially, Amara believed her new school was filled with friendly faces like her trusted friend Laila. She soon discovered, however, that not every smile was genuine. Some students particularly those with expensive shoes and designer clothes, began to notice Amara's different appearance. She wore her simple kente dresses with pride, each stitch a connection to her village, her family, her identity. To Amara, these garments represented her heritage. To the others, they marked her as an outsider, someone who didn't belong. Whispers followed her through hallways, sharp as thorns. "Look at her," they would murmur behind cupped hands. "She's just a village girl." Some girls laughed mockingly, hiding their sneers behind manicured fingers. "Doesn't she know how to dress properly in the city?" Each word pierced Amara like a bee's sting, small but intensely painful. Amara tried to maintain her dignity, to ignore their cruel laughter and hurtful comments. She walked briskly, hoping each day would end quickly, praying the next would bring kindness instead of cruelty. But the whispers only grew louder, the laughter more pointed. They began calling her village girl, as if she had no name, each utterance echoing painfully in her mind. Even some boys joined in the torment, nudging each other and smirking when they spotted her in her traditional clothes. They would block her path, their eyes cold with contempt. "Go back where you came from," they would sneer. "You don't belong here." Amara's heart grew heavier with each passing day, loneliness wrapping around her like an inescapable shadow. But having faced hardship before, she steeled herself, remembering the village that had invested their trust in her, the people who had sent her forward with nothing but hope and prayers. Nevertheless, the burden grew more crushing each day, and Amara began to wonder if city life would eventually break her spirit. The once bright light in her eyes dimmed gradually, as if the city's shadows were consuming her inner flame. And now, as you continue reading, you might notice that feeling of empathy growing stronger within you, connecting you more deeply to Amara's experiences. As time passed, Amara couldn't help noticing something peculiar about her friend Laila. Despite coming from a family of modest means, Laila always seemed to have money for new shoes, trendy clothes, and the latest accessories. While Amara counted every coin and struggled to afford basic necessities, Laila lived comfortably without apparent financial concerns. One afternoon, Amara's curiosity finally overcame her discretion. "Laila," she asked gently, "how do you manage to buy all these things? Where does your money come from?" Laila merely laughed, a quick, dismissive sound, and waved away the question with a casual flick of her wrist. "Oh, Amara, don't worry about it," she replied with an enigmatic smile. "Just a little side business here and there." But Amara's mind couldn't rest. She observed Laila disappearing in the evenings, dressed with extra care, her eyes sparkling with secrets. Each time, Amara's curiosity intensified, sharpening like the edge of a well-honed knife. Amara tried asking Laila again, but her friend deflected once more, saying cryptically, "One day you'll understand, Amara," before swiftly changing the subject, leaving Amara's questions hanging in the air. Yet the mystery of Laila's side business lingered in Amara's thoughts like a persistent shadow, making her wonder what other aspects of city life remained hidden from her understanding. Days transformed into weeks, and occasionally Amara would renew her inquiry, hoping her friend might finally reveal her secret. But each time, Laila would laugh dismissively, treating it as a mystery intended to remain unsolved. "Just enjoy life, Amara," she would say. "Don't worry about how I get my money." But Amara couldn't ignore the nagging thought at the back of her mind. There was an unsettling undercurrent, a hint of something unknown, and it began to expand like a dark cloud over their friendship. What was Laila concealing? How was she managing to live so comfortably while Amara struggled alone? During quiet moments, Amara tried to make sense of it all. But the question followed her like an echo, a half-spoken secret lingering in silence. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was merely the beginning of something she couldn't yet comprehend, something buried deep within the city's complex heart. As you read these words, Notice how your own curiosity grows, pulling you deeper into the story, making you lean in just a little closer. Time slipped through Amara's fingers like fine sand, and her small reserve of money soon evaporated completely. The city's demands were endless, and each day Amara's hunger grew more intense. A sharp reminder that the support from her village, generous though it was, could never be enough in this expensive new world. Her stomach would growl persistently, like a restless animal. The pain intensified as her hope began to fade. In her modest room at night, with only a candle's glow illuminating her letters home, Amara would write with trembling hands, "Mama, Papa, life here is challenging. I don't want to be a burden, but everything in the city is so different, so expensive." She sent these letters hoping her words might bring additional help. But Nyima was a poor village. They sent what little they could spare, small packages containing dried fish or a few precious coins. Her mother's replies overflowed with love and concern, but Amara knew her family was stretching their resources to breaking point just to support her education. Days evolved into weeks of persistent hunger. Amara struggled to concentrate during lessons, her thoughts drifting like smoke, too weak to maintain focus. Her stomach would rumble during classes, each sound seeming as loud as thunder. She tried to remain still, ignoring the mocking laughter from classmates who noticed her plight. Amara knew she couldn't disappoint her village, but her spirit was fracturing slowly, piece by precious piece. Nights grew colder, the city darker, and the weight of her hardship pressed upon her like an invisible stone, heavy and unrelenting. Through it all, Laila's carefree laughter echoed in Amara's mind. Her friend with mysterious income, hidden secrets, and no apparent worries. Amara's heart twisted painfully, caught between pride and the bitter taste of desperation. One night, as Amara lay on her thin mattress, stomach empty and aching fiercely, she reached a breaking point she could no longer ignore. The hunger clawing at her insides had become a constant, merciless reminder of how difficult city life had become. The following morning, with exhausted eyes and a heart heavy with shame, she approached Laila outside their school. "Laila, please," she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. "I need to know. Let me work with you. Whatever it is, I can't continue living like this." Laila studied her friend with a serious expression, her usual smile fading as she recognized the depth of Amara's desperation. "Amara," she began slowly, her voice unusually solemn, "are you certain? This isn't like other jobs. It's different." But Amara's eyes reflected her determination, her need too overwhelming to turn away now. "I don't care," she stated firmly, her voice steadier than her emotions. "Just show me. I have no choice." After a long moment of tense silence, Laila finally nodded in agreement. She led Amara to a secluded corner where city lights cast faint, dancing shadows. "Listen, Amara," she began in hushed tones. "This isn't something you share with anyone. It's a way to make money quickly, but it's not what you might expect." And there, in whispered confidences, Laila revealed the truth. Amara's heart raced, her pulse quickening as she understood what her friend was describing. This wasn't the kind of work she had imagined. It was something that felt alien, dangerous, something the elders of Nyima would never condone. But Amara, weakened by hunger and hardship, nodded wordlessly. "I'll do it," she whispered, her voice barely audible, but resolute. For the first time in months, she felt a small measure of relief, though it was overshadowed by a growing darkness in her heart. Her path was changing dramatically, and she could sense it. But there seemed no alternative now. As you continue reading, you might notice your breathing changing slightly, becoming more aligned with the rhythm of this story, drawing you even deeper into Amara's world. That evening, Laila brought Amara a dress that glittered like evening stars, one that transformed her appearance so completely that she almost looked as though she belonged in the city's glittering nightlife. Laila applied makeup to Amara's face using colors Amara had never worn before. When she gazed into the mirror, she barely recognized the stranger staring back at her. "You look perfect," Laila assured her with a confident nod, her smile both reassuring and somehow distant. Amara followed her friend to a nightclub where lights pulsed like heartbeats and music throbbed loudly. The air felt thick with laughter and conversation, strangers moving from table to table with practiced ease. Laila guided Amara through this unfamiliar environment, demonstrating how to speak, how to laugh, how to charm. Nervous but determined, Amara followed every instruction, every whispered guidance from Laila. As the night progressed, Amara found herself sitting with a wealthy man who placed money in her hand, more than she had ever possessed at one time. She had pleased him earlier, in a private room, in ways that would have scandalized her village. The currency slipped into her palm like a gift from another realm, the weight of the coins filling her with a strange new sensation. She had arrived with hunger gnawing at her heart, but now she felt something entirely different, something approaching exhilaration. When she left the club that night, pockets full, the city light seemed more vibrant, her worries less immediate. She spent freely, purchasing food and treats she had only dreamed of tasting. For one brief moment, she forgot everything. Her village, her promises, the hope she had carried from Nyima. All she knew was the thrill of her newfound lifestyle, a taste of freedom that felt as sweet as honey on her tongue. Amara had stepped into a world both dazzling and dangerous, a world that made her feel more alive than she had ever felt before. She didn't realize then that with each step she took, she was moving further from the girl Nyima had sent forth with such high hopes. Notice how you can almost feel the shift in Amara's path, how the story pulls you along this new direction, making you wonder what consequences might follow. One early morning, Amara returned from the lavish home of a wealthy client she had spent the night with. Her body felt unusually heavy, a deep ache settling into her bones, and her skin seemed to burn with an inner fire. She dismissed it as minor illness, perhaps exhaustion from late nights, and the stress of her double life, maybe a slight fever. She collapsed into bed, hoping rest would alleviate the strange weakness that clung to her like a persistent shadow. But when Amara awoke, the weakness remained. Days passed, and her fatigue increased with each sunrise, her body feeling as if it were gradually slipping beyond her control. Her friends noticed the change and expressed concern. They brought her food, medicine, anything they thought might help restore her strength. But Amara continued to weaken, her vitality draining away like water through open fingers. Then something even more disturbing began to happen. Her abdomen started to swell. Initially, she convinced herself it was merely her imagination, but the swelling increased daily, her belly growing rounder and firmer. Meanwhile, her arms and legs became alarmingly thin, fragile as dry twigs. The other girls whispered among themselves, their faces pale with recognition and fear. "It's like Kajaro," one murmured, shaking her head in disbelief. "But how? She eats more now than ever before." Amara herself was terrified. She touched her swollen abdomen, pressing gently as if trying to understand this mysterious transformation. She felt her bones protruding through her skin elsewhere, her cheeks hollowing, her eyes growing larger and more distant. Yet her belly continued to expand, as if harboring something far more sinister than mere hunger. Her friends did everything possible to help. They brought traditional herbs, specialty remedies, and medicines rumored to cure almost any ailment. They watched over her, hoping each morning would bring improvement, that she would sit up with her familiar smile, her strength miraculously restored. But despite their efforts, Amara grew progressively weaker. Her skin lost its healthy glow, her hair became dull and brittle, and her once bright eyes now appeared exhausted, burdened with shadows that no amount of rest could dispel. Days turned into weeks, and eventually her friends exhausted every remedy they knew. City doctors examined her, then shook their heads helplessly, stating, "There's nothing we can do." Gradually, even her friends began to distance themselves, frightened by what they couldn't understand. Amara lay alone, feeling her life slipping further beyond her reach, like a river flowing away from her outstretched hands. Desperate and terrified, her remaining friends made a difficult decision. "We must take her back to the village," they whispered. Among themselves, nodding with grim determination, they would return her to Nyima, the village that had once filled her heart with strength and hope. It was the only place left that might save her, the only place where healing might be found. With heavy hearts, they carefully lifted Amara's frail, diminished body, covering her with a blanket, and began the journey to Nyima, hoping her people would understand and forgive. At this point in the story, you might notice a feeling of concern growing within you, a desire to see Amara find healing and redemption. Amara's friends arrived in Nyima on a misty gray morning, carrying her with the gentleness one would show a fragile treasure. The villagers, who had eagerly anticipated her return for months, gathered around, their faces alight with expectation. They had dreamed of this day, imagining Amara returning as the embodiment of their collective pride, a young woman transformed by city education, perhaps even wearing clothes that gleamed like city lights. But the sight that greeted them left them speechless, their hopes crashing like stones. Amara was barely recognizable. Her once beautiful face was gaunt and hollow, her body frail and thin, as if she hadn't eaten properly in weeks. Her abdomen protruded dramatically, swollen and round, a disturbing contrast to her otherwise emaciated frame. Her eyes held a dull, distant gaze, as if she were looking into some invisible void. The vibrant girl who had left carrying their village's hopes now resembled a ghost returned from some dark, haunted place. Amara's friends, avoiding the villagers' questioning eyes, hastily explained that she had fallen ill, that city life had overwhelmed her, and that they knew nothing better to do than bring her home. They offered no further details about the life they had introduced her to, each word heavy with unspoken truths. Without another glance, they turned and departed, hurrying back to the world they knew, leaving Nyima and Amara's fate behind them. The villagers stood in shocked silence, murmuring among themselves, confusion and sorrow mingling in their voices. This cannot be our Amara," someone whispered, struggling to reconcile this broken figure with the girl they had known, her. Parents stepped forward, trembling with emotion, and knelt beside her frail form, tears welling in their eyes. They had sent a young, vibrant girl with dreams as vast as the sky, and now before them lay merely a shadow of that child, broken, weakened, and silent. The village gathered around her in somber silence, each person struggling with their disbelief and sorrow. Feel the weight of this moment, the collective heartbreak of an entire community seeing their hopes return in such a devastating form. Amara lay on a woven mat in Nyima's central meeting area, surrounded by familiar faces, each heavy with concern. Her fragile body shivered as she looked around, seeing the warmth and sadness in the eyes of those who had sent her to the city with such high expectations. With trembling lips, she began to speak, her voice barely a whisper, but carrying the weight of countless regrets. "Life in the city was unbearably difficult," she began, her gaze fixed on the ground. "The money you sent, it was never enough. I tried to manage carefully, but hunger became my constant companion." Her voice cracked as she continued, each word seeming to cut her like a sharpened blade. "I met a friend, Laila, who showed me a way to survive, but it was a path I should never have followed. I forgot my purpose. I forgot all of you, the ones who believed in me. I chose the wrong direction." As her confession filled the air around them, the villagers listened intently, their expressions mixing sorrow with understanding. Tears streamed down Amara's cheeks, each one glistening like fallen hopes in the morning light. "I have disgraced you all," she whispered, and brought shame to my family, to our entire village." Elder Mosegi stepped forward, his face stern, but his eyes soft with ancient wisdom. He placed a gentle hand on Amara's head, his voice deep and steady as he spoke. "What afflicts you now is not merely illness, Amara. This is not a common sickness. You carry a child conceived outside the sacred bonds of marriage. This is the manifestation of our village's traditional values, a consequence for breaking our sacred covenant." The villagers murmured in agreement, nodding as understanding dawned. Amara's swollen abdomen, her weakening body, it was all part of an ancient consequence, one familiar to every child raised in Nyima. The tradition was explicit. If a young woman lost her virtue or conceived a child outside the bonds of marriage, her body would suffer, her spirit would weaken, serving as a living reminder of the village's honor and values. But Elder Mosegi continued, his voice steady and reassuring. "There exists a cure, Amara. Our village has witnessed such sorrow before, and we know the pathways to healing. The journey back to health will demand much from you, but if you are willing, you can become whole once more." Amara looked up at the elders, her eyes brimming with both hope and shame. She nodded gratefully, appreciative of this chance for redemption, for the understanding reflected in their gaze. The villagers encircled her, their hearts softened with compassion, ready to help her find her way back to herself. As you read these words, you might find yourself hoping for Amara's healing, feeling invested in her journey toward wholeness. The village healers gathered around Amara, whispering ancient prayers as they prepared medicinal herbs and potions. Their hands moved with gentle precision, treating her with the care one would give to a rare, delicate flower. Each day they applied roots and leaves soaked in special oils, massaging her swollen abdomen while whispering words of healing designed to guide her spirit back to strength. Amara remained still, trusting their methods completely, gradually feeling warmth return to her bones like sunshine after a prolonged storm. Slowly, Amara's strength returned. Her frail body began to fill out, her eyes regaining their former brightness. She learned to care for herself properly, consuming the nourishing meals her mother prepared and listening attentively to the advice of village elders on how to nurture the growing life within her. They taught her how to embrace her belly with love and respect, how to speak tenderly to her unborn child, how to make peace with the path that had brought her home again. She learned that redemption often begins with accepting one's mistakes rather than hiding from them. Months passed, and finally, the momentous day arrived. Under a star-filled night sky, Amara gave birth to a baby boy whose cries filled the air like a song announcing new beginnings. The villagers gathered, offering blessings and prayers for the child's future. Amara held him close, his innocent face a powerful reminder of all she had endured and the promise of everything she could yet become. She named him Jabari, meaning the brave one, for he represented not only her son, but also her personal redemption. Take a moment to visualize this scene of new life and new beginnings, feeling the sense of hope that comes with it. As seasons changed, Amara grew increasingly determined to complete what she had originally set out to accomplish. With Jabari in her arms, she vowed to return to her education, this time with renewed purpose and a heart full of genuine intention. Her days stretched long, balancing academic studies with motherhood, but her resolve never wavered. She worked tirelessly, treating each small achievement as a step toward the life her village had envisioned for her. Years passed, and Amara's dedication produced remarkable results. She developed into a respected woman known not only for her intelligence but for her remarkable resilience and inner strength. When she finally returned to Nyima, not as a lost soul, but as a woman who had overcome tremendous adversity, the village celebrated her triumph. They honored her courage and the strength she had demonstrated. when facing life's harshest challenges, seeing her not as someone who had strayed from the path, but as a woman who had learned, grown, and returned stronger than before. Amara's story became a tale passed down through generations, a powerful reminder of the importance of courage, resilience, and second chances. The village of Nyima, once quiet and traditional, now carried her narrative like a precious gem, a lesson for all young people who would someday follow their own unique paths. As years flowed by, the people of Nyima spoke Amara's name with unmistakable pride. She had transformed into the living embodiment of their hopes and dreams, a beacon illustrating the strength that resided within every heart. And as this story comes to its conclusion, perhaps you'll find yourself carrying a piece of Amara's journey with you, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, redemption and new beginnings are always possible. As you've journeyed through this tale, you may have noticed subtle shifts in your own thoughts and feelings. Stories have a unique power to transport us, to help us see ourselves in others, and to remind us that transformation is always possible. What lessons will you take from Amara's journey into your own life?